What's good, Atlanta? This is the Blog and Nerdy podcast, where Dirty Bird is the word if you haven't heard. I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer, fansided.com. Gonna have a fun show for you guys today. A little bit of an upkeep here. Obviously, today is Wednesday, March 26th. Next week's episode will be delayed. It will be coming out, I believe, on what would be, I think it's the 3rd, whatever that Friday is. I'm looking at it here on the schedule. So yeah, Friday, April 4th will be when we're back on because next week, Fansided, all the Fanside employees have a conference in Phoenix and everything like that. That'll occur during the normal time that we schedule to do the show, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. So we're looking to do that there on Friday, probably at about 11:30. Looking probably 11:30 or noon because doing a lot of podcasts that day. Going to do fall start in the morning and then take a little break, maybe a very brief one, and then do this. But that's kind of the upkeep of all this. And then probably doing something later in the month of April, in and around the draft. Again, I'll be back in Phoenix again and just keep going. Just what's where I'm at. But yeah, episode today and then an episode probably in about 9 days. So I don't know if you like that, but let's get started with some you like that. The Kirk Cousins trade timeline has been revealed. And what does this mean for the Atlanta Falcons? It seems as though he is not willing to waive his no trade clause until after the draft has reached its completion, meaning he's not going to go somewhere where he thinks that he's going to get Michael Penix Jr. again. This guy has no self-awareness. This is starting to get up there with some Russell Westbrook, Russell Wilson, Russell Brand, and honestly, Russell Hammond. He's not a golden god. He's just a guy. This is so frustrating because, I mean, he's using leverage here on the Falcons. It's just bitter. It's an awful divorce. I think there's obviously a lot to unpack here. So we're probably going to be seeing a trade in about a month or so. I would say that the Falcons are going to be getting some sort of compensation back probably in the 2026 NFL draft. I think they need to get a 5th-round pick or more back from him because they need to get the 5th-round pick back to, account for the tampering charges. If they can get something to recoup, the Matthew Judon trade with the Patriots, that would be wonderful as well. Somewhere in that 3rd, 4th, or 5th round range. I think the question is, what team is going to want to trade for him? So looking at it right now, it looks as though that the Tennessee Titans are going to take Cam Ward number 1 out of Miami. I don't really love that. I don't really like Cam Ward. I think the fit's terrible. I think he's kind of a head case. We'll see what happens. But it's a smart pick, I guess, for the Titans to make, all things considered. So God bless. So anyway, I don't think Cousins is going to go there. The only way that happens is if they take who is actually the best player in the draft. That would be Penn State linebacker Abdul Carter. Then maybe after it, they're like, okay, Cousins, come in. You go play for Brian Callahan, and we'll see what happens. But I don't think it's the Titans. It's most certainly not going to be the Giants, who in recent days have acquired Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. They also have Tommy DeVito. I don't think this removes them from the equation of getting Shedeur Sanders entirely. They'll probably. Maybe they're in the market more for like Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe. Honestly, who knows what the Giants are doing? They're so dysfunctional. They're so terrible, so boring. Can't believe I got to write about them as much as I do, but that's neither here nor there. So that's really 2 teams that I don't think Cousins is going to go to. You're looking at now mostly Cleveland and Pittsburgh are really the 2 that stand out to me. The Cleveland part, they got to get somebody. They got to ride out the rest of the Deshaun Watson catastrophe. If Atlanta eats the bulk of Kirk Cousins' salary, then they can probably trade him for something. I mentioned a 4th-round pick for Cousins. Maybe you get the latter of the 3rd. We'll see what happens there. But I think the Browns might end up drafting Shedeur Sanders. Maybe that's why the Giants acted so swiftly. Maybe they got intel saying it's going to go 1-2 with Ward and Sanders. So let's get a quarterback, and then let's figure out if we want to get Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter there for. Maybe Mason Graham. We'll see what happens with that. But I would say this. Cleveland has been the team that I thought made the most sense for it. Again, he's worked with Kevin Stefanski before in Minnesota. They not going much of anywhere. They were a playoff team 2 years ago. Myles Garrett's back. Cousins grew up in the Midwest in Michigan, so he could play in the cold weather. Started Michigan State. I think the Browns are a good spot. But there's also the Steelers of it all. Right now, the only quarterback of note they've got is Mason Rudolph. And I wrote about that for fansided.com this morning about the Steelers going through it. They're kind of in the bargaining phase of quarterback grief. They're trying to see, okay, is it good to have Mason Rudolph next year? We kind of know him. He's been here for a couple of years. He's okay. But in reality, they're just going to go 9-8 and not make the playoffs and be back where they were. I think that they're still in play for Rodgers as well. I think that's the place he's going to go. He's either going to go to the Steelers or retire. I would also say that it behooves Pittsburgh to draft Jackson Dart at 21, or maybe even grossly reach on Jalen Milroe. Maybe he's available in the second round. Maybe go get Quinn Ewers, but you got to get some guy. So in reality, I think just the desperation that teams like Cleveland and Pittsburgh have at quarterback, it leads me to believe that maybe he's just stuck on the Falcons. Maybe they're going to hold on to him until somebody gets hurt in training camp and they need a starter. So, and I think that's kind of goes more in the tune of like, that's why it's probably going to be a 2026 draft pick as opposed to 25, because you can't have a trade set up in place. Like they may have something like in the works where like, if this happens, like in the market, you do like a premeditated sale. Like if the price goes below this, buy this many shares. If it goes above this, sell. That's how a lot of it operates. But I would say like, if you're thinking about it from this perspective, the Cousins of it all, it needs to end. It needs to end now. And the worst part about it is for the Falcons is like, who's our backup? I mean, the guy I wanted to back up, Michael Penix Jr., Jameis Winston just signed with the Giants. Maybe he gets cut. Maybe he comes in. I don't know. But he's got a 2-year deal with the G-Man. I mean, what's your other options? Carson Wentz? I mean, he's even less willing to be a good teammate. But then again, like he'd fit right in with the Falcons. Did a lot of hunting here. Again, I'm not really in favor of Carson Wentz coming over here, but this is a contingency plan where, like, I think if they have a trade in place before the draft, and let's say the Steelers or the Browns don't draft a quarterback in the first round, maybe they trade him on day 2. Maybe they get a guy then, and then maybe we end up drafting somebody in the 3rd round or the 4th round or something else like that, just somebody to back up Penix. But again, that's so stupid. The Falcons didn't interview or speak with anybody on the offensive side of the ball in the combine. This is not a great quarterback draft class. And even if you end up with someone like Kyle McCord in the 5th round or whatnot, like you have an incredibly young quarterback room. And we saw the problems that existed in between Matt Ryan. Like you got to have some guy who's a veteran who knows he's a backup. Chase Daniel, where are you at? But right now we know that Cousins is probably going to get traded in and around the draft. I'm hoping it happens around then. I hope when it comes to May that we don't have him on the team and we go look and get another quarterback in free agency. Maybe we sign Ryan Tannehill. I don't know, but like we got to get some closure on this. We got to move forward. And the longer that Kirk Cousins is on this team, we're still going to talk about it. I didn't want this to be the lead topic today, but it was, and this is the Blog Nerdy Podcast. So we're going to move on to something else that's probably not fun with some too legit to Pitts. I've been seeing once again the trade rumors pertaining to Kyle Pitts. Can't stop and won't stop. So what should we even make of them? Looking out there on Google, I've seen 3 different trade proposals of sending Kyle Pitts to an AFC team. I've seen him be projected to go to the Patriots. I've seen him go to the Colts. And I've seen him go to the Bengals. The Bengals one is with ESPN's Benjamin Solak, who, I mean, I can't believe he works there. There's no such thing as imposter syndrome because he works for ESPN and Brandon Staley's goes to the Chargers. You can do whatever the F you want. But I think this all comes back to this. Does Michael Penix Jr. want Kyle Pitts to be on the team? Yes. Does Zach Robinson? I'm not so sure. I think that he is more of a he's better in a different sort of scheme. When you're 11 personnelling the opposition to death, he's not really as effective. You know, he's not a tight end playing. He's not a wide receiver playing tight end. He's just another wide receiver who is kind of slow, more of a possession guy. So I'm looking at teams that you've mentioned as where he could go. The Bengals always kind of seem to know what they're doing with the tight end position. Joe Burrow, I'm sure, would have incredible success with him in the same receiving core that also has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. That would be really good for the Bengals. I would say that the Colts, they got to figure out very quickly if Anthony Richardson can play or not. And Anthony Richardson's also a Florida guy like Kyle Pitts, although Kyle Pitts had his best years with Kyle Trask throwing the ball as opposed to Anthony Richardson. But also then, you can kind of see what the Colts have to figure out if Anthony Richardson can play. And if he can, then I think having a tight end safety valve like Pitts might help. But he also might get lost in the shuffle there. And then with the Patriots, they were so defensive heavy in the draft or in free agency that I wonder what they're going to do in the draft. If they're picking at 4, that's too high to be taking a receiver this year. And no, Travis Hunter is not a receiver. Travis Hunter is a cornerback. And the sooner everybody realizes this, that he has to play one position, then we'll move on with this. Chris Gamble, we thought could do everything in the NFL, and he really couldn't. The day and age of Chuck Bednarik playing both ways is over. It just doesn't happen. I mean, you can be, Shohei Ohtani. When was the last time Shohei Ohtani pitched? You get what I'm saying. Like, the Patriots, that would be a good fit. I think he'd have a lot of success there with Drake May. I don't really know what they're doing offensive-wise, but I trust Mike Vrabel a little bit more than, honestly, Raheem Morris. So, Patriots, I think probably the Colts is the most easy fit. The Bengals, you'd have to trade a lot to make this happen. And then obviously the Patriots is too much going on there. I think the Falcons would only move on from Pitts if it is to an AFC team and if it were for like some mid-round compensation right now. Probably a third-round pick. And I think that would just show that whatever Terry Fontenot did in his first draft of the Falcons was a complete failure. You've extended the 5th-year option to Kyle Pitts, but it seems like it's going to go the Vic Beasley route. You have one good year, another, and then 3 mediocre ones, and then you bring it back for a 5th-year option. It doesn't really work out, and you fizzle out of the league because I don't know if they really love football. I've talked to Kyle Pitts. He's a nice guy before. I'm rooting for him. I want to see him succeed here, but he's got to be better. He can't be out there playing like another drowsy Florida player who played in Atlanta called Al Horford, just the most frustrating NBA player of all time. Ugh. We took him at 3 too, behind Kevin Durant and Greg Oden. Yeah, congratulations, guys. That's neither here nor there. I don't think they're going to trade Pitts. I think that the Falcons don't have enough weapons offensively. Didn't really address it too much in free agency, and it can't just be Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod again. They got to get something else. There's got to be a 4th receiving target. And I think for that, he has value here. I think it adds some level of versatility. Maybe we go back and we relook at this in 2026. But yeah, I don't see Pitts getting traded. If he could, then again, it just kind of goes to show the Falcons don't know what they're doing. Moving on to our next topic, we're going to make some further calibrations to our roster. Yes, I almost got a ticker wrong there. Further calibrations to our roster. The Falcons have added Jamal Agnew, Jordan Fuller, and they brought back Felipe Franks for some reason. They also saw Lorenzo Carter go to the Titans and Rondale Moore sign with the Titans. We barely knew yet. So Jamal Agnew, I remember him. He's more of a return guy, kind of replacing the Avery Williams role here. Special teams guy. Maybe he'll do something on offense. It kind of backfills that role. Jordan Fuller, you got a cornerback coming in, I think from Carolina or whatever. They're all Fullers. They all play at Virginia Tech, so might as well bring one in here. And then Felipe Franks is coming back from, I think he was with the Panthers last year. The former Florida quarterback. Played his final year at Arkansas, signed on or came in as an undrafted player, kind of made it as a special teams player and tied in for the Falcons. He was also teammates with Pitts at Florida. He was the quarterback before Kyle Trask. It's just too much Florida stuff going on today, too much frustrating quarterbacks. But I think Agnew was a calculated signing. I think Fuller adds depth, and I think Franks adds depth and versatility. And again, I didn't really understand the whole point of him being here initially, but he has shown a willingness to pivot. and have staying power in the NFL. The fact he's still playing in the league, in his 4 or 5 years out of Florida, is quite impressive. This is a guy that I didn't think was an NFL player, but he's found a way to make it work. And I think maybe he'll make a play on special teams. Maybe the team will get a little more mentally tough. I mean, I remember him breaking his ankle awfully for Florida, and that really kind of ended his Florida career. He eventually went to Arkansas, helped kind of restart that thing there with Sam Pittman in I think 2020. Yeah, 2020. Yeah. So that's kind of what that is. I don't really have much to add about Fuller or Agnew. As far as Carter going to the Titans and Rondale Moore going to the Vikings, we kind of been there, done that with Lorenzo Carter, bringing in another former Georgia edge rusher, Leonard Floyd, honestly the better version of him. You knew that Carter was going to go. I like the fact that he had an opportunity to reinvent himself after failing with the Giants. He had his moments here, but not many. Just kind of like the last really great recruit that played a lot for Mark Richt out of Norcross. I think his high school teammates with Alvin Kamara. So it just kind of shows how their careers went in totally different directions. Carter was the more sought-after player out of high school. Kamara had the much better NFL career with the Saints. Obviously, you know how much slander I throw about Marcus Mariota. Don't ever get me started about Alvin Kamara. Don't ever get me started. And then I think like just an opportunity. He's kind of replacing Harold Landry, who goes to the Patriots. So Titans aren't going to be good. This is kind of Lorenzo Carter's lot in life. He's going to be on teams that aren't very good, kind of like scraping along the barrel for guys just holding on to a roster spot. He'll play well. He'll get another contract, and maybe he'll retire from the NFL here in a couple of years. But best of luck to him in Nashville. But we're not honestly like that sad to see you go. And then as far as Rondale Moore is concerned, this is probably the one that I want to spend the most time on with further calibrations to our roster. This is the guy that we traded Desmond Ridder for. This is a guy who shined for Jeff Brom at Purdue playing with Aiden O'Connell, electrifying player in the Big Ten. Purdue sucked. And then he kind of came along there pretty good. And then they suck again. So I'm just kind of mad that he didn't even get to play a game for us. But he got traded over here, and then he signs with the Vikings. It did afford an opportunity for Ray McLeod to step up his game, and he took advantage of it. But, like, we really needed him as that 3. And that's kind of like my other thing is, like, what are we going to do at number 3? I mean, I don't really see us, like maybe it is Ray McLeod again. Maybe we're comfortable with him in the Falcons offense that way. But honestly, I just wish we had a little bit more bite because, like, it's putting a lot of pressure on Drake London to truly be number 1. I think he is. It's putting a lot of pressure on Darnell Mooney to be a good number 2, which I think he is. And it's putting a lot of pressure on Ray McLeod to return it back. And you're also, and again, this comes down to the belief of why I don't think they're going to trade Kyle Pitts, because Pitts needs to be that for Penix. This is a huge year for Pitts. I think everybody in Flowery Branch is counting on him and pulling for him. I think the fan base and fantasy football players are frustrated. But I think just like allowing Rondale Moore to leave signifies that they like Ray McLeod and they like Pitts with Penix throwing him the ball. And but again, you're running an 11 personnel offense, and that requires 3 wide receivers at all times on the field under Zach Robinson, who's our wide receiver 3. Maybe it is McLeod. Honestly, maybe it's Pitts. So that's kind of what I've got right here with those transactions. Every time there's something that happens, I'll try to keep tabs on it, talk about it. No matter how big or small the transaction is, we'll do it. I think maybe last time I might have mentioned that Nate Landman, the linebacker the Falcons let go, he signed with the Rams. So again, there's kind of an overlap you'll see with people playing for the Falcons going to the Rams. And it's kind of like where you know somebody or where you think you can fit in with their scheme. Best of luck to Nate Landman in LA. Also, I think it might be a homecoming sort of thing for him. So maybe that's part of it as well. Moving on to the second half of our show, let's start off with the meat of it all, or just a slice of pumpkin pie. Will McFadden of AtlantaFalcons.com wrote something about every kind of pass rusher the Falcons could conceivably go after in the first round. He offers every flavor imaginable. Here are the ones I'm digging, and here's the ones that I'm not buying. So looking over here at his article, which was written, I think on Monday, He has edge rushers. He basically lists out edge rushers ranked number 2 through 7 in this class. He did note that the number 1 guy, Abdul Carter, is probably going to be a top 5 pick, so he's not going to be included in this exercise because the likelihood of him falling to 15 is it's not happening. So you've got Jalen Walker out of Georgia, Mykel Williams out of Georgia, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, Mike Green out of Marshall, Donovan Ezeroku out of Boston College, and James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. So I skimmed through McFadden's article a little bit to see kind of what he's thinking about. Jalen Walker at 2. Again, this is what Daniel Jeremiah has for NFL Network as well. They like his ability to be multiple. They think that he can play both linebacker and edge. This is a guy who has a knack for blowing things up. He's not very big. He's like 6'2", 245. He won the Butkus over Abdul Carter. He's a player that I think if you know what you're doing, I think he's going to have a lot of success in the NFL. And I think he could learn a lot from Leonard Floyd. And honestly, I'd be I kind of would be in favor of this one if he's there. But I can understand that, like, if you're not confident what you're doing in the front 7, then maybe he's not the player for you, and that's okay. I also tend to think that there's a chance that he may go to Carolina at 8, and that he's from Salisbury, North Carolina. That could be an issue for us for a long time. So if Carolina passes on him, it'd be a great opportunity to make the Panthers pay and keep this dog home. Again, remember, so many of the Falcons front office and brass went up to Athens for their pro day, so they've scouted everybody up there from Georgia very intently. So keep that in mind, maybe even more so than ever. Moving on down to Mykel Williams out of Georgia. This guy he's from Columbus. He was briefly recruited to USC. He was there for a while, then he flipped. Very much a true defensive end, true pass rusher sort of thing. Apparently he can help in the run. I think that fits what Atlanta might want. But I think the other thing is he had that ankle injury. He got hurt in the athletic kickoff versus Clemson when Clemson running back Phil Maffa dove into his leg. So he was dealing with injuries a lot during his junior season between the hedges. I think he has the potential to be like a number 1 edge rusher, but I think he comes in as a very high-end complimentary 2 or 3. I think he could be part of a very interesting ensemble cast with Leonard Floyd, Arnold Ebiketie, Braylon Trice. I think he'd fit in with what we'd want, but he is very much a every bit defensive end, outside edge rusher, whereas I think Walker you can kind of position a little bit differently, which I think makes him such an intriguing prospect. Again, with Williams, it's a little bit more of a projection, but I could see his game translating well to the NFL. Moving on down to Shamar Stewart. This is a guy who I think the Falcons are probably going to draft. Very much the athletic freak out of Texas A&M. Everyone saying like, oh, he's the next Myles Garrett, who was the next Von Miller. So if you have that, oh my God, you have the best edge rusher of my entire lifetime. You've got John Abraham here. It's gonna be amazing. You've got John Abraham, you got Chuck Smith, you got Patrick Kern, you've got exactly what you want and need. It'd be amazing. But he doesn't produce at A&M. I don't really know why. Maybe it was a period of transition. Jimbo Fisher stopped being the head coach. Mike Elko came in. A&M kind of attracts a certain type of guy. It's the very impressionable 5 stars coming out of high school who want to play in the trenches now on the edge. Kind of like Oregon, but Oregon's a little more flashy. Oregon guys are maybe a little more productive as well. Maybe A&M is like the SEC version of Oregon. That's neither here nor there. But this is a guy that I think all the things that it's kind of a boomer bust sort of thing. Like you're looking at him like, okay, maybe he's TJ Watt, the guy you passed on because you want to attack McKinley. Don't worry. The Dallas Cowboys drafted Taco Charlton. And I think the Miami Dolphins drafted Charles Harris that year that well. So who knows what we know. Shamar Stewart, I'd be okay with this. But I'm willing to accept that he might bust, and that's okay. I do think that when you have a guy who has like a high motor, interesting levels of athleticism, I think it'll work for Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich. I'm bullish on this, but again, I could see this blowing up in our face. But again, if you're picking at 15 and Walker and Williams are already off the board as well as Carter, then I think that makes sense. That's about the range where I think he could come off the board. Moving on down to the next guy, that would be Mike Green out of Marshall. I don't know if he did anything significant at his pro day. Very productive player, very much a speed guy out on the edge. Kind of reminds me of Vic Beasley, but probably the better version of him. I think he likes football. I would also say that I think the Falcons are honing in on him as well. Again, a guy who shined at the Senior Bowl as well. Very much boom or bust potential here as well. You wonder if he's going to make the leap coming up from the group of 5, although Marshall's a really good football program at that level. There's just a little bit of doubt in my mind. I think 15 is a little bit high for him, but if the draft board goes a certain way and we're left with him, then I guess we got to go in that direction. Then kind of moving on down to the 2 guys, we're like, look, we can't take him at 15. If we do, we got to trade back. That'd be Donovan Ezerico out of Boston College and James Pierce Jr. out of Edge. I have Tennessee. I'm tired. The Falcons have had good success of drafting Boston College players. I mean, Matt Ryan's the greatest player in franchise history, and Chris Lindstrom is the best player on this team. Played for NFL head coach and Bill O'Brien last year, and a guy who's an NFL defensive coordinator now, and Jeff Hafley. I think he's kind of like a faster riser up the draft board as well. Honestly, I wouldn't hate trading back into like the 20s and getting him. I think 15 is a bit high. That's my only concern about Donovan E here. Will McFadden also mentions that he has the ability to drop back into coverage, so I think that like he can be a multifaceted player for them coming off the edge. I think of the guys that we've mentioned on here, I have a hard time seeing him bust just because I think that like he's going to go to a good team. They're going to put him in positions to succeed. And also I think he's been coached pretty well. And I wouldn't hate this pick at all. And then moving on to the last one, I would hate James Pierce Jr. I just kind of feel that like I've also been hearing that there might be some character concerns pertaining to him coming out that might knock him down to the second round. That's kind of where he's going to be going. This is a guy that everybody said was a top 5 pick at the start of last year, and he's not. It was the same sort of thing with Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. So you wonder, like, whose draft stock took the biggest hit? It's Beck, obviously, because he returned. But, like, if it's like a second round pick and he's there, I'm okay with it. I don't think you want to trade. If he's a second round pick for us, I'm okay with it. But then, like, he can't be your first round pick. Maybe you double down. Maybe you go get, like, back in the day, we got a Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford, a cornerback back to back. That kind of worked out for us. So if I had to go through these 6 that Will McFadden had outlined, I would say that the 2 I'm probably the most excited about would be Jalen Walker and, honestly, Donovan Ezerico. I kind of feel that Jalen Walker's versatility, being a dog, being in the position where he'd be coming off the board, that'd be great. Also, you could make Carolina pay. Ezerico, I'm like, okay, he's played for Bill O'Brien and Jeff Hafley. Boston College has started to really develop guys. Program is in a good spot. And I think, but you got to trade back from him at 15. But if he rises up the board, I think I can understand that. I'm kind of in between like Mykel Williams and Shamar Stewart. I'd be okay with both. Obviously, Mykel being from my alma mater would be a lot of fun. Shamar Stewart, you're banking on the upside. These are both upside picks. As far as Green and Pierce is concerned, I don't hate Green that much. I just kind of feel that like this is the best edge rusher draft I've ever seen. And if you end up with him and he's just a guy, then that sucks. And then Pierce, I really don't want him in the first round. If it's the second round and he becomes the best player we've had in a long time, then I'll eat some crow. But that's kind of how I'm feeling about all of this. Moving on to our penultimate topic, we're going to blow the whistle. I came across this on an article writing for fanside.com pertinent to, I think, the Denver Broncos. Chad Reuter of NFL.com did his mock draft 2.0. He had the Broncos taking Arizona State running back Cam Scatterbo in the 4th round. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That's a good pick for the Broncos. Sean Payton likes to have running backs. This guy fits the ethos of what they're doing. So I looked around. I'm like, okay, who are the Falcons taking in this draft or anything like that? And I'm blanking on who they ended up taking it in the first round. It was probably one of these guys you mentioned anyway. There wasn't really anything like worthwhile, but he has the Falcons taking an offensive player in the second round. So I'm not going to blow the whistle on this. Do I like the idea of the Atlanta Falcons taking Georgia center Jared Wilson in the second round to replace Drew Dalman? Put on the spot here. I'm going to blow the whistle. Yes. Under this philosophy, I think the rest of the Falcons' offensive line is pretty good. Jake Matthews is, the standard bearer there at left tackle. Chris Lindstrom's the best interior offensive lineman guard I've ever seen play here. Caleb McGarry really comes along as a very nice complementary piece. Matthew Bergeron's coming along. But, you bring in Jared Wilson, maybe he competes with Ryan Newsel. The other option would be you get another dog. You get, the late head coach of the Falcons, Dan Reeves' nephew, and what's his name? David Andrews coming in, who got released by the Patriots. I think one of those three guys could work, but I think you're leaving yourself exposed without Dalman. Maybe you sign Andrews. Maybe you draft Wilson. It may be a bit of a reach, I think, taking Wilson in the second round. I think also for the fact that you didn't interview anybody at the combine on the offensive side of the ball, but you did go to Georgia's pro day. And the thing that I think I like the most about Wilson at center is, he was only a one-year starter because Cedric Van Pran was there for a long time. And Georgia's had a really good run of centers throughout since the entire time I've been there. Look, the two guys who were in my class at Georgia were AJ Green and Ben Jones. Those are probably the two best players we produced. Aaron Murray came the year after me. Brady Kern's a little bit older than me. I'm trying to think who else out there. But you had Ben Jones. Then you had David Andrews for a while. Brandon Cublano, who went to high school with my sister. He played for the Ravens briefly. He was pretty good. Cedric Van Pran, and then obviously Jared Wilson played there last year. People are going to forget about that. But I think if you play as part of an ensemble cast, between the hedges of Georgia, who's had a good offensive line for a long time, you learn things. I think a lot of guys at Georgia, they move around a bit. You're not always playing one position all the way through. And I think that could be of value to the Falcons. Maybe he is the starter. Maybe he's more of a swing interior guy. But this would be a pick that I think if you're sitting there and he's there and you kind of have some concerns about center, I think you go in that direction. Because I will say this until I'm blue in the face. You got to have a good center in the NFL. I don't know if it's it honestly might be beyond quarterback and edge rusher, your next most important position. Because if your center stinks, the transaction between the handoffs to the quarterback, it's not smooth. He has no offensive interior to operate from. If you're a mobile quarterback, you can kind of deal with the bookends not being good. You could throw on the run a little bit, but if you can't stand upright because they're just coming on you head on, you got no chance of success. I don't know if Wilson's that guy, but I do value the center position quite a lot. Probably more so than I should, but I do take this very seriously. I loved having Drew Dalman on the program back in the day. Best listened episode thus far. We'll see what happens down the line, but I'm okay with Jared Wilson coming to the Falcons. I really want to see David Andrews play here too. So David Andrews, Jared Wilson, come on down. We'll see what Ryan Newsel can do. Moving on to the last part of the show, I'm going to look at great. You can be on our team. Yeah, great. They can be on our team too. We're going to look at the top 30 visit tracker and what can we derive from this. This is important because it's an indication of who each team might draft. It's not an exact science, but it kind of narrows your focus a little bit. Basically, I think a top 30 visit means I think an NFL team can bring in, make sure I got this right. I don't care. I may correct myself on next episode. If you bring in a player for a top 30 visit, that means you're only allowed to bring in 30 players from the draft to your facility and kind of give them the works, like show them everything you got. So because a team only has like anywhere between 5 and 10 picks, you're not going to pick them all. And that's not to say, you bring them in there because you got to do your homework on these guys. And it's like back in the day when coaches were coaching the Senior Bowl, they would be more inclined to draft players who are participating in it because they saw them in practice for a week. They got a better look at what they're working with. So I think just this is in addition to having like a meeting schedule at the combine. This is like you bring them into the facility, you kind of see what they're about. You're learning more about the person than anything. So right now, and again, this is still kind of relatively early. The draft's about a month out. So right now, here are the 7 names of players who have top 30 visits scheduled or are slated to come to Atlanta if they haven't already. We got safety Nick Imanwori out of South Carolina. You got offensive tackle Josh Connolly Jr. out of Oregon. You've got cornerback Will Johnson out of Michigan. You've got linebacker Q Robinson out of Alabama. You've got cornerback Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. You got edge rusher Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, and you got linebacker Chandler Martin out of Memphis. These are some names, guys. These are some names. I would say of the 7, the 3 that you really need to pay attention to are Will Johnson, Shamar Stewart, and Maxwell Hairston. I'm of the belief if Will Johnson's there at 15, you might have to take him. I think that I'm of the belief that one of the 4 players coming out of Michigan, and Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, and Colson Loveland, one of them is going to be a star. One of them is probably going to bust. The other 2 will be okay. And again, I don't know who that is. But if you have a player like Will Johnson, who's kind of a technician out there, probably my favorite cornerback in the draft, although I would say Travis Hunter is really good too. But I don't know what side of the ball he's going to play. Jahdae Barron out of Texas is probably number 2 behind Will Johnson for me. They're all those 3 guys are all in the same cluster. But like you bring in Will Johnson, and I don't know, I think that might actually be the pick if he's there. Shamar Stewart, this kind of leads me to believe that he might be the edge rusher that we look at 15. Again, you're trying to figure this all out because you're trying to. There's talent there, but you got to do some homework, and I appreciate the Falcons doing that with him. I would also venture to guess that Mykel Williams and Jalen Walker and Malachi Starks from Georgia will all get top 30 visits too. You got to remember, back in the day, we bullied the Falcons to get Jalen Carter to come in for a top 30 visit, and they took Bijan Robinson right before him, and that's okay. Jalen Carter's a Super Bowl champion and having a great time with the Eagles, but you owe it to yourself. If there's like a nearby guy, like a last minute thing, it works out okay. But yeah, Shamar Stewart, I think they want to get the intel on him pretty quickly. And then I think Maxwell Hairston, I think that's the guy that we potentially could take in the second round at cornerback. So like you're looking at maybe you get Stewart in the first round, you get Hairston in the second round out of Kentucky, and that really helps solve your 2 biggest issues on defense. You don't have a 3rd round pick because that belongs to the Patriots by way of the Matthew Judon trade. And we'll see what happens in the 4th round. I think we got a couple of 6th round picks there. Don't have a 5th round pick because of the tampering. We'll see what happens. But those names are all of intrigue. I also would say that Josh Connolly Jr. could be a replacement potentially for Caleb McGarry at tackle. Maybe he's more of a Arthur Smith guy. We don't know. I don't really know anything about Chandler Martin. As far as Nick Imanwori, I know that South Carolina has players defensively. Even in down years, they've always kind of got dudes. So like, I think you're looking in the right places here for that, and I'm in favor of it. And I would say right this instant, just based off of what I've seen from the top 30, I would venture to guess that like Shamar Stewart could be the pick at 15 in the second round. Maybe it's Hairston. And I think I could get behind that a little bit more. Last year it was Penix and Rucarajo, and Penix has lots been put on Penix's plate. Orejo was not really that good, and then obviously Braylon Tristan played all last year. 3rd round pick. I'm gonna have one, but I want to see who else is added to this list. Maybe you can say that you can't really definitively say the Falcons are going to be taking players like this, but we can look back at it and be like, okay, I think that might be in our wheelhouse here. I think I can get behind that. Yeah. Thank you guys for hanging with me today on another edition of the Blog and Dirty podcast. Be sure to watch, like, comment, subscribe to the Blog and Dirty podcast on YouTube. It's at Blog and Dirty FS. You can follow Blog and Dirty on Twitter at Blog and Dirty. You can follow me on Twitter at the X at Buhler118. Be sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Really helps the show grow. I really appreciate all the new subscribers we've had of late. I love having the longer runway. We're getting closer to 300. So at that point, I'm not going to say I'm dressed up like this is a Sparta. A funny story. I've never seen 300, never will. I had a guy in my middle school, or my middle school, not that young, but my high school Spanish class who talked about 300 in the Departed every day. And that was his entire personality. Some people have The Office as their personality. He had that, and I just refuse to watch either movie. But I'll do like my rendition of what I think 300 is whenever we get to that point. I'll probably just dress like a dude. That's fine. You can also be sure to read all of my stuff there on fanside.com. Be sure to read all of your Atlanta Falcons coverage on Blog and Dirty. You can also read good stuff that our regional team is putting together on ATL Day. My first gig here at Fanside nearly a decade ago. Yeah, we're inside of a month of me being here for 10 years. At 25 years old, I was kind of in the middle of rock bottom, just trying to figure out like what I want to do professionally. Had some major career anxiety. I just started writing, and things kind of fell into picture. I've been working for Fanside full time for 7, 8 years now. Yeah, 7 years now. 8 maybe? Yeah, 8. Yeah, right after 7. Yeah, 2018. That's what I did. So yeah, been doing this for a way too long, but we're just getting started here, on the Blog and Dirty podcast. So yeah, I'm excited about getting into the nitty gritty of the off season. I think that's really kind of where I shine. It's where I let my creative juices flow. I like keeping up with the day to day of whatever's going on, but I'm gonna have fun with this. And more importantly, I hope you guys are having fun with this. And this is the Blog and Dirty podcast.